Hello and welcome to the Numedal Valley and this beautiful scenic drive. My name is Emma and I'm going to be guiding you from Kongsberg up to Geilo through the Numedal Valley. This is where it is. It's located just west of Oslo. The valley itself is not very long. It takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to drive through it without stopping. And on the way, we're going to be seeing 4 different stave churches. Yes, the Numedal Valley is the best place to see stave churches. From Geilo, which is the endpoint, you can either head towards Bergen or Hardanger, you can head towards Flam, or you can do as we do and head towards Fagernes, which will be our next video in the series. This drive is great for anybody who is into history and architecture. This valley is famous for having the largest collection of medieval wooden buildings in Norway. It's also a very easy road to drive on compared to many of the mountain roads you will come across on your own drive in Norway. The Numedal Valley is a little bit secret from tourists, so you don't get crowded with tour buses. You also see lots of beautiful historic farms, and you get a glimpse at some of the nicest cabins in the country. So it really is a great drive for all of those. Just keep in mind that there aren't really many museums here, and there aren't many shops here. You are really on your own in the real Norway. Right now, we are parked across from the Flesberg Stave Church, which is about 90 minutes from Oslo and just outside Kongsberg. The Flesberg Stave Church is the first of the 4 churches we'll see today. It is first mentioned in history in 1359, but is probably from the latter half of the 1100s or the first half of the 1200s. It doesn't look like much of a stave church, doesn't it? It's changed a lot over the years. The first ever painting of a stave church is of Flesberg Stave Church, and it's from 1701. Here is a picture on the screen of what they painted Flesberg Stave Church as, and you can see it looks completely different than what we're looking at today. In the 1730s, the church underwent its first restoration. It was expanded and some of the old parts were removed, as you can see. The new parts sadly were not in a stave style. In 1792, the church got a new roof and the stave church choir was torn down. Today, the only part of the original stave church is on the western side, where you can see stave decorations around the portal. There are so few parts of the old church left. I've got some information about how to visit the church. It is open to the public during the summer. You can find all the information about visiting, as well as a detailed overview of the history of the church, via the link in the description or at ilovebergen.net. But for now, let's leave Flesberg Stave Church and make our way north. Okay, as we make our way to the Rollag Stave Church, let me tell you a little bit about the Numedal Valley. So the name Numedal, it is the name of the traditional region. It's not an official name, it's not the municipality or the county. It is a U-shaped valley, and it is the southernmost valley of all the valleys in eastern Norway. The river that runs through the valley is called the Numedalslagen. The river is known for its salmon fishing, but you can also fish for trout, eel, and pike in the river. As we get further up the hills, you'll see all the fishing signs. The area along the river has a large number of examples of medieval Scandinavian architecture. In total, there are 40 historic timber buildings and 4 stave churches. We'll be seeing the stave churches today. Numedal was the location of one of the Nordmanns trails, which were the old main roads between east and west. On the marked paths, there are remains of Stone Age dwelling places, bog ironworks, and grave mounds. I should also add that Numedal has the largest collection of medieval wooden buildings in Norway. Today, most of these are found in open-air museums that are scattered all throughout the valley. I should say, however, that most of these open-air museums are only open during the summer months. You can typically see them, like from the outside, without having to pay an admission fee, but they only open the indoor buildings in the summer, typically when the kids are on holidays. This valley, it's not really popular with tourists, it's more popular with Norwegians, but I think it is well worth tourists coming here. Throughout this drive, we'll be seeing the railway line that used to be the Numedalsbanen. This was an old train that went from Kongsberg to Rollag. However, it did close down in the 1980s. Today, a small part of it is open that still has a train operating on it, and there is another small part that you can actually take your own train on it if you wish. I know a lot of these places end in the word berg. Rødberg, Flesberg, Kongsberg. Berg means mountain. We will be seeing a lot of farm buildings today. A lot of these are original farm buildings. If you look at the ones to the right, we will see these types of buildings everywhere. And if you watch my other videos, you'll also see them quite often in those videos. Those are old storage buildings, and they're always raised off the ground, and that is to keep the mice out. So this is where they would store food, like grain, and of course you want to keep the mice out when you're trying to store some grain. They are beautiful old buildings, and some of the oldest wooden buildings in Norway are actually these types of storage houses. In Norwegian, they're called stabur. So if you're driving through Norway, you'll notice, unlike some other countries, for example, the US or Australia, we don't really have roadside stops. Every 5 minutes, you don't see these signs saying the next McDonald's is this far away, or the next KFC, or so on. In Norway, we have things called kroes, which is spelt K-R-O. When you go inside one of these, you'll see there's a whole lot of trays with food, and you can pay for the buffet price, or you can order a meal. It's typically very simple, like meatballs and vegetables, or burgers, or hot dogs, and it's not really takeaway. You do sort of have to sit in there and eat it there, but still it's a really good alternative to going through a drive-through. Also, basically every service station has a counter where you can get hot food, which mostly consists of hot dogs or pizza slices, and a lot of places also sell fresh baked goods. There's always an option when you're on the road, and when driving through Norway, you're never far from a service station. We are now arriving at our second Stave church for the day, and do not do what we're doing and park in this spot. You do have to walk on the highway to get to the church. You'll see once we leave, there is a much better parking spot on the other side of the church. Now, the Rollag Stave church was built in the 12th century as a single nave church, the simplest type of stave church. In the 17th century, it was rebuilt as a cruciform church. While there isn't much of the original church left, Rollag Stave Church is still regarded as one of the most beautiful rural churches in Norway. Around the church you'll find ancient stone walls. Some have rings for horses. In the cemetery is an ancient stone cross. It's believed this site was an ancient gathering place for Christians before they got a church. The church is open during the summer months. Visitor information can be found via the link in the description. It's very common for these churches to only be open in summer, and I should also add that you can't buy a pass for all the churches, you have to pay for each individual church. A little frustrating. I think someone should invent a pass for Stave churches. Each church costs between 50 and 100 kroners, so you can imagine if you're trying to see all 28 Stave churches, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Anyway, let's make our way towards the third Stave church, which is the Nore Stave church. We are now arriving in Vagley, which is one of the larger towns we'll pass through in the Numedal Valley. The population here is 348 people. Vagley Church is also located here. The church is from 1859 and it is a typical example of a rural church from this period. They used to have a Stave church here, located where the present church is. The town was growing too quickly, so in 1859 they got their new church. Then the Stave church was torn down. It was from the 12th century and there is only one wall left of it, and it can be found in the Historic Museum in Oslo. In Vagley, you can drive a trolley on the disused Numedalsbanen. The trip starts in Vagley and ends at Rollag. The trolley was used to inspect the railway line and was an important means of transportation for operators on the line. We are now at the third church on our road trip towards Geilo. This is the Nore Stave church. Its age is unknown, but judging from the wood, the church may be from 1167. The portal is the same one as the one we saw at Flesberg. The floor plan of this church is unique. No other church has this sort of floor plan in Norway. Maybe the other Stave churches did. After all, there did used to be 1,000 of them, and now there's only 28 left. There is also a central mast in the middle of this church used to hold up the tower, and this is also quite unique in Norway. The inside of the church is absolutely beautiful and comes from all time periods, though most of it is from between 1650 and 1750. I've got a lot more information about the Nore Stave Church, which you can find via the link in the description, but for now we're going to make our way to the fourth and final Stave Church, the Uvdal Stave Church. here we are now at the Uvdal Stave Church, which is the last of the 4 stave churches on this drive. Compared to the other stave churches in the valley, this one is located high on the hill. This church was in use until the 19th century when a new church was built in the town. The new church looks exactly like a stave church, and you'll see what I mean once we get down there very soon. It's believed that the Uvdal Stave Church is from 1169. It has a central mast, just like the Nore Stave Church, used to hold up the bell. When excavations were done here, 200 coins were found from the 12th and 13th centuries. Like the other churches on our drive, Uvdal has been extensively restored over the years. The inner core of the church is the original stave church. Like the other churches, this one is open in summer. Now we're going to make our way down to the main road and I'll show you what the new Uvdal church looks like. We are now about to pass Uvdal's new church, which looks just like a stave church. You will see it on the left-hand side. A lot of people get these two churches mixed up. Here it is. You can see it does look very much like a stave church. It's actually built in the Draga style, which is a type of Norwegian architecture that's directly inspired by stave churches and medieval art. Also a lot of old Viking art as well. These are the two churches to compare. I know the stave church that is actually a stave church doesn't look like a stave church. It's a little confusing, but it'll make sense once you come here. We are now going to head up the mountains and make our way towards Geilo. There's not a lot between Uvdal and Geilo, but the drive is absolutely beautiful and you'll see some really good examples of Norwegian cabins and Norwegian ski centres. So sit back and enjoy the drive. We have now arrived in Geilo, which is the final destination on this scenic drive through the Numedal Valley. With a population of 2,400 people, Geilo is primarily a ski resort town and one of the most famous ski areas in Scandinavia. It's a great but expensive place to spend some time. After all, it is known for having some of the most luxurious and expensive holiday cabins in Norway. The town is located roughly halfway between Bergen and Oslo on the E7, making it very accessible. Additionally, there's the Bergensbanen, or the railway line linking Bergen and Oslo. Geilo was developed only when the railway was constructed and quickly gained a good reputation for winter sports. Geilo is the first skiing resort in the country and is still one of the largest. The ski season lasts from late October to late April. There are 39 slopes covering 33 kilometres. There's also an extensive cross-country system in Geilo with 220 kilometres of tracks. In summer, you can come here to go hiking and cycling. You'll find lots of shops in Geilo. There are 2 separate shopping malls which we can now see straight ahead of us. A lot of these shops are sports and outdoor shops, but on the main street you can also find lots of cafes and bakeries. There is some underground parking, which we're currently making our way towards, and it's free, so that makes it really easy. From here, you just have to leave the parking lot, head up the stairs, and you're on the main street. From Geilo, you can make your way to Bergen or Oslo, or there is another scenic road that will take you down to Flom. Anyway, this is now us approaching the end of our drive. I hope you have become inspired to come and visit the Numedal Valley on your own. It's a well-kept secret from tourists, but I think it is well worth making the trip here, especially if you want to do a nice drive that's not too stressful. Do check out my other videos as I travel around Norway, and thank you so much for watching.